Almost half, 4 of 7 autopsies have been completed, but the most difficult and expensive autopsy will only happen several weeks from now, when the ship is hoisted from the seabed, when it's recovered and brought to shore. According to The Guardian, Italian officials said it would be difficult to investigate the sinking fully unless the wreck is recovered. An autopsy on the ship, an assessment, will quickly establish, in the same way we see how and why people die, how and why this ship lost its battle to stay afloat, while the Baden-Powell right beside it did not. I think we already have an important clue from the craft, even before recovering the ship and examining it. I mean, that the weather is not the chief culprit here.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. One of the main reasons to understate, to underemphasize the act of God aspect in this case, in my view, is the fact that the Bayesian isn't leaking any fuel. This monster yacht has 18,000 liters of diesel fuel on board and none of it is leaking out. Why? Because the ship is intact, the whole ship, including its mast. There are 2 additional aspects worth considering at this point in the investigation. Intratextualities, not intra, and knowledge limits. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I think the reason why I feel some confidence, measured confidence, qualified confidence in covering this kind of case is because I did something similar with the Titan submersible. And I think I added some value to that conversation as well. Also because, I talk about being curious, and there's so much we can learn when we're open-minded and curious, and when we allow ourselves to find things out in areas that we are unfamiliar with. Well, what happens? We learn. And so I've certainly learned quite a lot just in covering this particular case, and it just improves our knowledge base, as we go further and further into true crime and we deal with different scenarios. And so it just gives us that kind of level of experience. In any event, if you found my analysis worthwhile, if you're still finding it worthwhile in terms of my coverage of this case, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button. You can also join Patreon, patreon.com/TCRS. There are daily uploads, daily posts. You can also engage with me directly there for about $3 a month, and let's get started. So intratextualities, what's that? Well, that's the term I've invented. You're not going to find that in the dictionary. Intratextualities are consistencies in the fabric of a case that are internal, within, or inside the original. Contrast that with intertextualities. These are consistencies or patterns that can be found without. In other words, across different cases, across the fabric of different particular cases or incidents. Now, so far we've been probing potential intertextuality with Titanic, and I think quite unexpectedly with a lot of success. Another surprising aspect is this idea of people going down in a massive yacht, inside a massive yacht, while there are air pockets, and being still alive while this huge craft is going down. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first heard about this yacht and that they were spending hours and days looking for bodies, they still couldn't find the owner of the yacht, they were still looking for him. Well, I assumed that the bodies were somewhere outside of the yacht, floating in the water column. Didn't you? The fact that 6 bodies are found inside the yacht with virtually no injuries, and that they apparently died of asphyxia, suggests to me also that the onus is less on a freak storm and more on crew protocol. Why weren't these people simply woken up? Why were they not woken up in time, or perhaps at all? Coming back to intratextuality, we've already looked at the astonishing intratextual mismatch between the 2 ships caught in the same storm. One is riding it out like a champion, and the other is sinking like a stone. One captain and crew respond in a certain way, and the other in a different way. Intratextually, that's interesting. The interesting question is whether we will see intratextuality in the remaining autopsies. So 4 of the autopsies show no water in the lungs. So what about the other 3? Did the chef drown as well, and he was found outside of the ship? What about Mike and Hannah? Did anyone actually drown, or did no one drown? And what does that tell us about the amount of time there was for the survivors to potentially save some of the victims? Now, according to The Guardian, quote, autopsies are expected on the bodies of Lynch and Hannah on Thursday, while in the afternoon, investigators will begin a technical assessment on the sunken yacht to verify whether a hatch was open, which would have led to its sinking. So this is officially under investigation. It's not just speculation. They're officially investigating whether a hatch was open. And I think if there are going to be charges or a prison sentence, right, or sentences, much rests on this question. Was a hatch left open, yes or no? Whose responsibility was it to close these hatches? Back to The Guardian, according to the local fire rescue service, the bodies were found in the highest part of the ship, as it was clear people were trying to hide in cabins on the left-hand side. And I think this really provides a glimpse into the emergency situation, the desperate struggle to survive. And, you know, our hearts really go to these people. It must have been a very traumatic and horrible series of moments, you know, the last moments of their lives. You know, they're in a luxury setting. They're expecting this to be an enjoyable life experience, not a tragic and horrible and traumatic end of life. Anyway, the ship landed on its right side after it sank, plunging to a depth of about 50 meters. I've tried to emphasize that in the past as well. Now, another question is, were these survivors woken by the water and the storm or by the crew? Remember, the crew had been awoken themselves by fellow crew. Did they extend the same courtesy to their fellow passengers? If not, why not? Possibly because they felt it's a big craft, we need to take charge, we need to do what we need to do, and we need to make the situation comfortable for our wealthy, moneyed, well-heeled passengers. We don't want to disturb them. And perhaps that was a fatal mistake. Perhaps that was a huge lapse in judgment. Now, also according to The Guardian, officials believe the passengers sought escape routes, reaching the opposite side of the vessel they were in, but the space to breathe was quickly shrinking as water rapidly flooded the rooms and the air bubble became increasingly toxic due to the rise of carbon dioxide. And that brings us to number 2, knowledge limits. I don't like to talk about knowledge limits. Most of the time I feel there's absolutely every reason to believe we can get up to 99% certainty about what happened in any case that we pay enough attention to. But there are funny areas where we seem to have to admit we know very little. And one of them is this aspect of no water in lungs, of drowning victims or people who die in a water type situation. Can we say with certainty why this is? I think it's reaching to say that they were in an air pocket. I remember in the Kylie Rodney case, it wasn't even acknowledged whether there was or wasn't water in her lungs. And that, I think, must get us to concede that we need to be humble in the face of thinking we have this incredible knowledge capacity, when still there are a lot of things we don't know about ourselves and human biology.
I have much to learn. I know that now.
I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.